what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, we are fast approaching Easter week. This coming Sunday, we shall be celebrating Palm Sunday, followed by Good Friday, and then Resurrection Sunday. It is all about Jesus Christ. We need Jesus more than ever before. God said, if we honor him, he will honor us. 1 Samuel 2:30. Therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declare, I promise that your house and your father's house would minister before me forever. But now, the Lord declares, far be it from me. Those who honor me, I will honor. But those who despise me will be disdained. Those who honor the Lord shall experience his blessings in every segment of their lives. Bahamas, it pays to honor the Lord. Shall we pray? Prayer of St. Paul. I thank my God always when I remember you in my prayers, that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, give you the spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of him. May the God of endurance and encouragement grant you to live in such harmony with one another in accord with Christ Jesus, that together you may be one voice, glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus prayed in John 17:21, that they all may be one, as you, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you. In 1 Chronicles 4:10, Jabez prayed a prayer today. I am praying this prayer over our nation. Oh, that you would bless us and enlarge our territory. Let your hand be with us and keep us from harm, so that we will be free from pain. Praying the prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray, saying, Our Father, in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. Forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good afternoon, honorable members. Today in our nation, it's a day of great joy and great sadness. Today, we learned with profound regret of the passing of the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. Her passing constitutes a great loss to the Free National Movement, the women's suffragist movement, this parliamentary institution, and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Today, the Bahamas has lost one of its greatest daughters. She casts a huge shadow over the political landscape of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. She served this institution with distinction and left a legacy that future generations of national leaders will do well to emulate. This is also the day when the leader and founder of the Free National Movement was birthed. 88 years ago. And so we celebrate, in one instance, the birth, and today also the death. And this is another particularly important date to me personally. There's a young lady from Baines and Grantstown who I say is beautifully and wonderfully made. Her name is Kim Alexis Anastasia Smith Moultrie, my lovely wife. And I wish her a very happy birthday also on this 20th day of March. We have with us a distinguished group of young Bahamians, having distinguished themselves in 3 separate categories in the recent Carifta Games. In the under 14 group, in the under 16 group, and under 19 group, the Bahamas took the Triple Crown in water polo, winning all 3. Winning all 3 gold medals. And at this time, the chair would recognize the honorable member for Mako City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is with honor and pleasure that we welcome to the gallery outstanding Bahamians who typify the point we often make, that Bahamians are as talented as anyone else, anywhere else in the world. Mr. Speaker, I believe water polo was introduced into the Carifta system somewhere around 2000. The Bahamas participated in 2004, and from the very beginning we've had varying degrees of success. Last year, of course, while the competition Carifta being held in the Bahamas, we won a gold and a silver. Of course, this year the determination is that we will carry out the sweep. And Jamaica, we believe, is honor to what will happen during the ultimate games, which we believe this year, for example, we won the gold in all categories. But this team has its sight. These teams have their sights set on bigger prizes down the road. And so, in the gallery, Mr. Speaker, persons who are going off to school to excel in a variety of disciplines. A number of them also are amazing swimmers, so they can compete in any of the various swimming disciplines as well as in water polo. This government, as I mentioned, with the backing of Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister, intends to assist them because they certainly have So before, Mr. Speaker, before we ultimately hear from our Prime Minister and, of course, the Leader of Opposition and our great freedom fighter, Glenys Hanna Martin, before we hear from them, I would only say the Grand Bahama Port Authority has agreed to partner with the government 50% on a 50-meter swimming pool in Grand Bahama. And to say that this government will cause to happen additional facilities so the water polo team does not have to fight for space in the Betty Kenny. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say congratulations to the coaches, the Aquatics Federation, who have done a remarkable job, all of the parents and support team, to the family members, and our incredible team, under 14, under 16, under 19. God bless you. They should not let you speak.
Thank you. The The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm very privileged to the House and very grateful to the House and the leader of our side for allowing me to say 2 words. He said 2 words. But I wanted to just as I told them, I'm officially a fan, so I'm speaking more than anything as a fan and as a proud Bahamian. I just wanted to say to these young people that you went internationally. On behalf of this country, you carried our beautiful flag. And I can tell you that you made us proud as a people. And I want to say, and I think this would be the last thing I say, because he said 2 words, that this is indicative of what the young people in this country are capable of. And I truly believe that you have set a tone and a pace for this nation for young people. And I believe that you will take this nation to new heights, heights that we cannot imagine, that we cannot even dream of. And I want to encourage you, whatever it was that brought you together as a group and fueled your fervor and your talents and your competition that raised our beautiful nation to the fore, I want to encourage you in every aspect of your life, whatever it is, whatever you go on to do after this, that you continue with that and to understand that you are symbols in this great nation of what we are capable of achieving as a people. I congratulate you. I support you 100%. And I want to say to the parents, I know the hours you have to get up in the middle of the night and all this to support your young people and early in the morning, etc. I want to thank you for your belief in your children, your sacrifice as parents, for your support, for your cheering, for your coaching, and this is the end product. The nation is grateful to you and for your sacrifice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And let me start with Cat Island. Because Cat Island has very significant, because what you see here today is constructed from a little place in Cat Island we call Greenwood. It started there. What we have here today, the success of it rests from the foundation starting from there. I had a stepson that hailed from Germany, and my grandson, Thomas, is a part of this wonderful mix. Thomas, stand let them see you. Now, when Mr. Speaker, whilst talking with the members of the successful team, and I said, Thomas is my grandson. Hey, look, they were amazed. Then I had to call Chris, the father. I said, well, Chris came to the Bahamas back in the 90s, as a young man, child, and was put into my hands by his father, and I was able to groom him to what he is today. I was able to marry him off to a very fine Bahamian girl. But suffice it, Mr. Speaker, that I point that out because very often we don't pay enough tribute to those who come and dwell amongst us and note their contribution to what they would have done for us. Yes. In this instance, I'd like to take my hat off to Chris Illing, who really, when he came from Cat Island after being married, he said to me he started a water polo club. he knew I was very interested in swimming because I used to be, back in the day, very much involved. Yeah, no, that's true. No, I was, no, I've taught, no, yeah, some time ago. Yes, I was on the executive. I mean, in fact, speaking about a 50-meter pool for Grand Bahama, that was on the drawing boards from back in the day. When Alan Murray was swimming and Bert Bell and the rest of the coaches, all of whom I'm very familiar with. But back to the polo team, Mr. Speaker. Swimming is the genesis to be able to participate in the sport. But swimming is it brings individual satisfaction. But what greater satisfaction you have when you could have a team, right, with more than one, coming together, working together to achieve that good color. You know, gold is a good color. and to get that goal. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, to get to the talents and the skills of our Bahamian youth, you know, we as policymakers, we as parents, we as teachers, coaches, we hold the key, really to the cage of the talents that are sometimes caged by the circumstances in which people find themselves, particularly young people. Because very often they put upon themselves self-imposed cage around their abilities and capabilities. And it's for us as policymakers, teachers, coaches to unlock the cage that keeps and inhibits their skills and capacity. And so in this instance, I just urge us, recognizing that we continue to unlock these cages that inhibits and keeps challenged the abilities and capacities of our young people. I'm also very pleased to note that, you know, the team is mixed. So we have two young ladies on the team. To congratulate them as well, because it is a sport that lends itself to all genders, and it is so good to note that there is a co-ed team that participates, and that is, I think, in the under 16 or the under 14 is that co-ed team. I call it the co-ed team. And your team is a good thing because each of you recognize how you feel today. Because when you think of the word team, what you have together, each achieve more. And look what you all have achieved. The goal, the ultimate prize for what you went to Jamaica for. We congratulate you. You have made us all so very proud. It's good to be a Bahamian. And it is in this spirit that it brings us all together. We forget whether we have PLPs, F&M. We wear gold, green, yellow, red. I forgot the red. And this is what brings us together. And it is successes like this that we need to have more of so that we could put down the sword of division that continues to divide us. So congratulations and thank you for coming today, because you bring some healing into our place today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As the Leader of the Opposition got up to congratulate our young athletes, he initially spoke so passionately about Cat Island and the young man that I was looking for the resemblance. And I don't know, I was having some problems with my eyesight. But obviously I must get them checked again. But Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the young athletes for doing so well. They've made the Bahamas proud. I was informed yesterday, and I wanted to come out badly to greet you at the airport. Unfortunately, I had other commitments, but I thought it would have been in keeping with me being present there with you. I want to congratulate the coaches and other team members who had assisted, and especially the parents. For the parents, you play a very important role. Mr. Speaker, these young athletes demonstrate the quality of individuals we have in the Bahamas. And you start off with gold, you must continue your life with gold. I am especially proud because today, one of the young athletes, Wallace Whitfield, is celebrating his birthday today. And why it's so special to me was because in my medical years and career, I delivered young I never thought that at that time I was holding gold in my hand. I delivered you, but you were not old enough to deliver me. But your time will come. But again, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the polo team. You have all made the Bahamas proud. And believe me, the entire Bahamas is gleeing at this particular moment. Congratulations, and continue to do well, and continue to make not only the Bahamas, but your parents proud. May God continue to bless
you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, in order for us just to do simple house cleaning in regards to housekeeping, in regards to the team, in regards to the team, we're going to take I do move that the House suspends for about 10 minutes, and then we'll return.
Second. Just before we break, I want to say a special word to my wife, because I don't know what time I'm going to be getting home this evening. And I want to let her know, like a butterfly, you float in beauty and in splendor. Your heavenly aroma makes my heart and will surrender. At dawn, kaleidoscopic sun rays beam your glory. One by one, they magnify your fragility, strength, and beauty. All my pleasures, old and new, I owe them all to you. Because on our wedding morn, honey, you said, I do. Honey, I do love you. Have a happy birthday. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House suspend for 10 minutes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of the House stands suspended for 10 minutes. When the business of the House suspended on yesterday, the Honorable Member for Kalani had reserved the floor. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am so honored to get up to speak today. It's a moment I think the entire Bahamas has been waiting for. Newspapers in particular were asking for quite some time, and I was not in the position to give them a definitive date. But the bell has finally rung. Mr. Speaker, before I start, I want to extend condolence to the family of Teresa Moxie Ingram, who was passed away this morning. She was a former minister, member of Parliament, and a minister in the Free National Movement government. She's made a great contribution, not only to the Free National Movement, but to this country. I also want to extend condolences to the family of MCM William Bullard, who again has made great contribution to the Free National Movement and especially to our victory. And I want to extend condolences to the family of Mr. George Cox, a leading engineer in our society. Mr. Speaker, before I get into my debate, I want to send a special note to the Kalani constituents. They have asked me repeatedly, when are we gonna repair the West Bay Street corridor from Blake Road to Old Fort Bay? And I've been assured by my Minister of Works, who has embarked on an infrastructural crusade within the improvement, that Kalani will be a part of it. But before he can pave our road, it's essential that we repair our water mains, and that's the holdup, because we work systematically. We don't pave, then come and cut. We fix and then pave. And I also want to inform the residents of Twin Lakes that I've also been assured that their streets would likewise be repaired. And I'm hoping that all would be completed by the end of this year. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to make contribution to the debate on the 2017-2018 mid-year budget performance statement. I do so on behalf of the wonderful people of Kalani, whom I have the privilege of serving in this chamber. I wish to address today a number of important national issues, as well as a number of items in my portfolio. I will address, Mr. Speaker, the successes of my government and our vision for the country, and acknowledge where we have committed errors and made missteps which need to be corrected. We will be honest with the Bahamian people about where we failed and what we will do to improve governance. A recent editorial, Mr. Speaker, in the Nassau Guardian, dated the 14th of March, 2018, noted, the Minister administration has had successes. The economy is growing. It did not during the Christie administration, drifting from stagnation to recession. Last year, it grew by 1.8%. This year, 2.5% growth is projected. This is good news. The editorial continued. We've had a violent crime problem for a decade, with 5 murder records occurring between 2007 and 2017. As of early March, murders were down 45%. Compared to the same period in 2017, continuing a trend that began at the end of 2017. work being done by the police force, Ministry of National Security, and the courts seems to be leading to positive results. The editorial continued. The Minister administration has also done well to bring order to the chaotic, irresponsible spending of the last PLP administration, the worst government the Bahamas has ever had. Not yet. Many millions of dollars worth of contracts were granted to PLPs for the benefit of PLPs and not the Bahamian people. A change of government stopped the PLP's raid of the Treasury to the benefit of taxpayers. We might not have had a Bahamas left if the PLP continued in power, end quote. The editorial further noted, Mr. Speaker, the editorial further noted, the government is close to generational change at the New Providence landfill. It wants to address the shantytown issues. It wants to transition the state energy supplier to new forms of power generation. It wants to continue luring investors in order to keep growing the economy. This government has done good things and has the potential to lead transformative policy, end quote. Nassau Guardian, 14th of March, 2018. Mr. Speaker, I would like to add to this list the approximately 1,000 Bahamians who have gotten jobs as a direct result of our Labor on the Blocks initiative. I commend the ministry and the Department of Labor for the good work they have done with this innovative program. Those who have criticized the program for political reasons should be embarrassed for attacking an initiative that is empowering so many Bahamian families. The editorial also noted the need to address the Urban Energies project. Mr. Speaker, my government committed to Grand Bahama and to the Bahamas to do all within our power to bring economic development and growth to Grand Bahama as a matter of urgency. This has been our focus at all times. We intend to fulfill this commitment. It is one of the keys to our overall growth as a nation. The Urban Energies LLC project was intended to bring growth and jobs to Grand Bahama. In our haste to boost the economy of Grand Bahama, we made a number of missteps in the Urban Energy projects. While our heart was in the right place, these missteps should not have happened. We must, we can, and we will do better. Mr. Speaker, to highlight some of the history behind the proposed Urban Energies LLC project, our records show that there were two approvals in principle by NEC for the project. One in 2009, the Mid-Atlantic Project, LLC. Mr. Speaker, by 2016, the name of the company was changed to Oban Energies, LLC. And the beneficial owners are the K Family Irrevocable Trust. Mr. Peter Kriegler was the chairman and chief executive officer. It is this company that was given the second approval in principle by the former administration on the 15th of November 2016 at a National Economic Council meeting, a committee of the cabinet which deals with all foreign direct investments, FDI. Most cabinet ministers were present at that NEC meeting, including members who are now the opposition in both houses of Parliament, here and in the Senate. Mr. Peter Kriegler was CEO, and Satpal Duna was president of Oban Energies, LLC. As early as 2009, Mr. Speaker, as early as 2009, a draft heads of agreement was submitted to BIA, Bahamas Investment Authority, and sent to the Office of the Attorney General for its review. This document was not executed. On the 30th of March 2017, the second proposed heads of agreement was forwarded to the PLP government by Mr. Obi Pinling of Pinling and Co., the Bahamian attorney for Oban Energies, LLC. This was sent to the Office of the Attorney General on the 30th of March 2017 for review. It should be noted, Mr. Speaker, it should be noted that this heads of agreement, that in this heads of agreement, Mr. Peter Kriegler was to sign on behalf of Oban Energies Limited. And Mr. Speaker, I want to show heads of agreement. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to show that the signatures that were supposed to be for this heads of agreement were the Honorable Kalis E. Roll, MP, the Director of Investments, and Mr. Peter Kriegler, Chief Executive Officer. The PLP, Mr. Speaker, never got around to signing this agreement. Note that the PLP agreed to the development. The PLP agreed to the development despite the hypocrisy they are now displaying.
Yes. Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, you on a point of order?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
State the infringement.
The infringement?
Yes.
He speaks, first of all, the member spoke to two members in opposition being present at NEC meeting. He then goes on to say that the PLP did not get around to signing the heads of agreement. The PLP never signed the heads of agreement, and he ought to at least indicate that the approval that was given in November 2016 16th was subject. And then he might, to put the full facts. Put the full facts. Right? Put the full facts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the members choose, I would table the document at the end. But the member said that I made a statement about members here and elsewhere at the NEC meeting. You know, and I know, that NEC meeting is a cabinet, and I can't bring those papers here. But you know, and I know exactly what happened. I could quote what you said. I could quote what you said.
On point of order, the chair recognizes the honourable member for Englishton.
Yes, the member has singled me out.
Honourable member, state the infringement.
Mr. Speaker, the member has singled me out and has misled this Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And let me just say to the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
How did the member mislead the Parliament?
Because what the Prime Minister is seeking to do now is
You're preempting?
Yes, I know, yes, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
State how he has misled the Parliament.
Because he's giving the impression, Mr. Speaker, that something was said by myself or someone. What he's saying, what he's doing is most improper. First of all, Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that the Prime Minister is seeking to selectively refer to cabinet minutes in this Parliament and doing it in a way in which they've not been made available to the public. He's making assertions about members on this side, Mr. Speaker, and it's very wrong. But if the member wants to quote me, Mr. Speaker, he can do so. When I speak for the Bahamian people. I'm not a coward, Mr. Speaker. I'm not a coward, Mr. Speaker. I am not a coward. And I invite the Prime Minister, Speaker, not to be a coward. Take responsibility for his error in this matter.
Honourable member.
Take responsibility.
Honourable member for Kalani. Hold on. Honourable member for Kalani. Honourable member for Englishton. You know, yes. You are infringing the rules. You are infringing the rules by referring to members as cowards.
Speaker,
the chair
I'm not a coward.
Requests that you withdraw that remark.
I withdraw the remark, Mr. Speaker. I will say this. I am not a coward. I take responsibility where my responsibility lies, Mr. Speaker. I stand up like a woman, Mr. Speaker, and I take my responsibility.
I'm satisfied. You've withdrawn the remark?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I left my home this morning, and I promised my cabinet colleagues that I will stick to the script. I'm trying my best.
Yes.
But these lying eyes saw your names. A 2016 video shows Mr. Peter Kriegler and Dr. Michael Davil, then PLP Minister for Grand Bahama, relevant government officials, Oban Energy's Bahamian attorney at the time, Mr. Obi Pinling, at the original site of the proposed development adjacent to Statoil in East Grand Bahama.
You got a video?
And yet, the Member of Parliament for Englishton referred to the principles of Oban Energies LLC as a cornucopia of crooks. Let me repeat if you understand. The Member of Parliament for Englishton referred to the principles of Oban Energies LLC as a cornucopia of crooks. Well, Mr. Speaker, well, these are the same cornucopia of crooks with whom some of her cabinet colleagues and the PLP government sat down and negotiated. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, furthermore, one of them visited the site in Grand Bahama, which the nation can see on a video press. Mr. Speaker,
The video's going back. The video's going?
Yeah.
Video going back.
it was the members government which approved the project and was about to sign the heads. Mr. Speaker, I want to show a picture of Mr. Peter Creek, Dr. Michael Darwell, inspecting the site for which the project was supposed to be. And Mr. Speaker, it's clearly demonstrated that the PLP members were present. But we all know, Mr. Speaker, they were busy after the 30th of March last year. But we are now the government. Mr. Speaker, we should have done more comprehensive due diligence, and we should have engaged in wider environmental consultation. Mr. Satpal Duna, president of Oban Energies LLC, arrived in the Bahamas on the 6th of February with the expectation to sign the heads of agreement on the 7th of February 2017. The document was not ready for signature, so he remained in the Bahamas until the 10th of February, at which time he signed the agreement and then left the country to attend other business. The heads of agreement was subsequently signed by the Secretary to the Cabinet. In recognition of its promise to keep Bahamians informed, the government arranged for a ceremonial signing on the 19th of February 2018. We accept. We accept that we should have clearly indicated on the 19th of February 2018 that it was a ceremonial signing. We accept. It should be noted that it is not unusual for heads of agreement to be signed before a ceremonial signing, so as to ensure that there is a firm agreement between the various parties. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that at the ceremonial signing, Mr. Peter Kriegler wrote the name of Satpal Duna, whose name was printed under the signature line in the space provided for the signature of Mr. Duna. He should have noted that he was signing on behalf of Mr. Duna and signed his name as the authorized representative of the Oban Energies LLC on the ceremonial document. I am advised, Mr. Speaker, that effective the 1st of March 2018, Mr. Krieger has resigned from the company. The government decided to make effective date on the heads of agreement the 19th day of February to conform with the public ceremonial signing. Mr. Speaker, the Grand Bahama Project must go hand in hand with the protection of our environment and the conservation of our natural resources. Accordingly, the government will do a more comprehensive review of this matter. This review will include our due diligence process at BIA, Bahamas Investment Authority, and all environmental and land use issues, including laws relating to environmental impact assessments and consultation processes, including with residents of Grand Bahama, in particular, East Grand Bahama. I note that it adheres of agreement penalties under the Environmental Management Plan. The penalties are noted in 5.3 in the heads of agreement. The agreement notes that the minister responsible for the environment shall make the determination whether to continue the penalties or cause the discontinuation of the operation or equipment producing the environmental infraction, and any other relevant governmental agency may determine to suspend the permit for the operation of the terminal or oil refinery as applicable, end quote. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas Investment Authority, BIA, is a unit within the Office of the Prime Minister. It is an investor's one-stop shop. The unit assists with investment policy formulation, investment promotion, investment proposal review and analysis, and post-approval monitoring and support. As the administrative arm of the National Economic Council, BIA coordinates investment matters within all agencies of the government, simplifying the process for the investor. The role of the authority includes administering the national investment policy of the Bahamas, which encompasses receiving and reviewing investment project proposals, providing assistance to international investors during the implementation of approved investment projects, arranging local and international investment promotions for investors interested in business opportunities in our Bahamas, coordination of investment matters with other agencies of government, and ensuring that effective administration of the range of incentives available under legislation. I thank the staff of the Bahamas Investment Authority, BIA, for the hard work they do. To improve our process, the government has selected a consultant to advise on the work of the BIA. This will include reviewing the investment policy framework, streamlining BIA's operational methodologies, the development of a more dynamic approach to investment promotion and facilitation, and redesigning the current organizational structure and technical framework to allow for an improved, effective use of FDI, foreign direct investment, and national investment, and overall economic growth. This consultancy will be financed through the IDB's project Public Financial Management Performance Monitoring Reform for inter alia, a revised institutional and technical framework for the operations of BIA. The consultancy is for a duration of 6 months and is expected to begin the 4th of April. The government of the Bahamas will proceed with an institutional change and results-based framework. Mr. Speaker, Having listened intently to the contributions of the members of this honorable House over these past several days, I am pleased, I am so pleased with the vitality and vision expounded by government members. I note the contribution of the Minister of National Security, who detailed our program for combating crime and violence, one of the top priorities of my administration. We will continue to supply the Royal Bahamas Police Force with the resources they need. And we will continue to pursue reform of the criminal justice system. Through the Citizen Safety Initiative and other social intervention measures, we will continue to aggressively address the causes of crime, gang activity, and at-risk youth. For 5 long years, the current opposition dithered at the helm of government, mostly oblivious to the needs and aspirations of Bahamians, spending the country into massive debt. But listen, we are now the government. We are now the government. And we must be held responsible. The Bahamian people want us to govern. Our task, Mr. Speaker, our task is to enhance prospects for much stronger growth, job creation, and prosperity for all segments of society. Get our public finances in order and reduce the onerous burden of government debt on both this generation and that of our children and beyond, many who were here this morning.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, in the 10 months since coming to office, we have begun to implement our vision for the future with concrete action plans underpinning this vision. While the time since our election has been relatively short, our team has been working hard. I only had 3 hours sleep last night, you know. I can't wait to get home to bed. And I had opened my corned beef last night, but I didn't have time to cook it. The key messages, Mr. Speaker, that were presented in the mid-year budget statement reflect both the work that we have undertaken to date and our approach to tackling the economic and fiscal challenges going forward. It is evident for all to see that our domestic economy, while rebounding gradually from many years of weak, if not negligible growth, is still performing well below its potential. Let us begin by looking at the growth of the economy over the past 5 years, both in absolute terms and relative to other economies. The performance of our economy has been poor. The economy actually shrank in real times in 2013 by 0.6%. It contracted again in 2014 by 1.2%. The year 2015 was even worse, with a further decline in economic activity of 3.1%. Finally, in 2016, our economy stopped shrinking but posted only negligible growth of 0.2%. The United States of America is by far our most significant trading partner. It is little surprise that there has been, over the years, a relatively close correlation between the rate of growth of the U.S. economy and our own rate of economic growth. However, following the Great Recession of 2008-2009, that correlation has broken down, and the performance of the Bahamas economy has been much weaker than that of the U.S. As well, as was documented in the last IMF Article 4 staff report, our economic performance has also lagged significantly behind that of both the other Caribbean tourism-intensive countries and non-Caribbean small states. Over the period from 2012 to 2016, the Bahamas economy shrank from $10.7 billion to $10.2 billion, a decline of some $500 million or 4.7%. The key driver of that decline was a sharp reduction in gross fixed capital formation or investment. Over this period, it fell by over $600 million. That comprised a decline in spending on buildings and infrastructure of over $400 million, and a fall in spending on machinery and equipment of some $200 million. In contrast, total consumption expenditure grew by almost $140 million, and export rose on the order of $175 million. Imports rose by $250 million, that is. These developments are especially worrisome, for it is generally acknowledged that buoyant investment is critical to stronger, sustained, long-term growth. Looking at the longer historical record, one is struck by the period of the early 1990s, when the Bahamas economy traversed a very difficult period indeed. In 1991 and 1992, the economy shrank by roughly 8%, followed by very tepid growth of 0.3%. If that sounds eerily familiar, it should. One need only look at the last term of the previous administration. Under the new F&M government, elected in 1992, real economic growth was successfully rejuvenated and averaged 4.7% in real terms over the 7-year period from 1993 to 2000. Growth actually reached a stellar rate of 7.1% in 1999.
Go back to the UBP.
Which may well have been unprecedented at that time, and certainly has not come close to being repeated since. Of particular note, in the context of this renewed and buoyant growth, the policies implemented by the F&M administration to improve the business environment led to a sharp increase in investment in the economy. Indeed, the ratio of investment to GDP increased from a low of under 20% in 1993 to reach more than 30% in 1998. In tandem with stronger growth in investment and the economy, the national rate of unemployment plummeted from 14.8% in 1992 to 7% in 2000 and 6.9% in 2001. Those are easily the lowest rates recorded in at least the last 30 years. Based on experience and looking ahead, if we wish to successfully and meaningfully enhance the potential growth rate of our economy, we must focus our policy interventions on influencing the key factors that underpin the rate of potential growth, including the quantity and quality of capital. On the capital front, it is vital that we achieve higher rates of saving and investment domestically, as well as promote the Bahamas as an attractive locale for strategic foreign direct investment. To those ends, we are striving to enhance the business and investment environment primarily by moving to ease the burden and cost of doing business in the Bahamas. Specifically, we established an Ease of Doing Business Committee whose mandate was to review the various factors that impinge on the ease of doing business and to formulate appropriate recommendations for policy action on the part of government. In line with the recommendations of the Ease of Doing Business Committee, and as the Minister of Finance highlighted in his opening contribution to the debate, we have formed a cross-agency committee to examine the business license regime with the aim of making that system faster, easier, and better. The business license process is being streamlined in 3 phases to be completed by January 2019, which will allow much faster approval times through the greater use of digital platforms that will support the integration of systems between agencies and offer complete online service. Other recommendations of the committee will be implemented, with some measures to be introduced in the upcoming 2018-2019 national budget, as micro and small and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, are a prime engine for job creation in the economy. The government has developed a 7-pillar strategy that is specifically focused on promoting the development of MSMEs. These pillars include, among others, creating a more enabling environment, providing direct financing with a commitment of $25 million over 5 years, and establishing the Small Business Development Center to provide business development support. As well, we have also announced a 1-year waiver on business license fees for small businesses with turnover under $100,000 that is to commence in the new fiscal year. New public procurement legislation will also provide for specific bids to be set aside solely for small Bahamian businesses. We are also reviewing legislation and policy, including tax compliance certificates, to facilitate and better support the starting up of businesses as well as the conduct of business. Through initiatives such as the Commercial Enterprise Act, we are promoting and supporting Bahamian entrepreneurship, investment, and ownership as a driving engine for growth and jobs. The Act also aims to enhance foreign direct investment through the liberalization of the granting of work permits. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on the matter of promoting investment and capital formation for stronger economic growth, it is equally vital that government provides the suitable and effective public infrastructure that supports increased productivity, competitiveness, and private sector growth. The Minister of Finance was clear that while we have had to hold the reins on capital expenditure, so far this fiscal year, infrastructure development is an area of government activity that will require priority attention going forward to ensure that public infrastructure responds to the economic and social needs of a modern and competitive Bahamas. Growth-friendly and growth-enhancing public investments will need to be a particular priority. We will be fully cognizant, however, of the need to arrange for the fiscally prudent means of financing such investment, including an appropriate role for public-private partnership. We intend to make provisions in the new budget year for substantial expansion in the capital investment of the Bahamas government to bring our national infrastructure up to standard. We need new modern schools, modern hospitals, and clinic facilities. We need improved digital infrastructure. We need to repair and rebuild our airports, our roads, our docks, and our sea defenses throughout the country. I want to repeat that Exuma and North Eleuthera will receive new airports. Mr. Speaker, Long Island is on the list also. Mr. Speaker, I had visited Exuma, and North Eleuthera. And I was just recently, and I was somewhat embarrassed the amount of tourists visiting Exuma and North Eleuthera, amount of jets on the tarmac. The tourists could not hold within the airport and were forming long lines outside, totally being exposed to the elements. If we are to grow, we must correct this. Exuma, as I move further in my debate, I will point out who will be leading that charge and who will subsequently replace you.
So you might as well come over now. Come over now.
You got 3 hours. Time will come again.
This time is unlimited.
You got 4 years. Enjoy it. We have a structured program of road improvement for New Providence. Unlike the other side, who spent $1.5 billion in capital works over their last term, with precious little to show for it, all Bahamians, young and old, will be able to see and touch and experience whether their money is spent on public infrastructure works. As I mentioned earlier, labor plays a key role in our national economy, and it is critically important that it be utilized to its maximum potential. We must place particular emphasis on bolstering human capital and addressing the gap that exists between the specific skills requirements of employers and the sets of employment-related skills of job seekers. So, a central policy challenge is striving to bolster both potential and actual economic growth. It's not simply ensuring the availability of adequate supplies of workers, but more importantly, the appropriate availability of skilled workers to underpin the expansion of the private sector. We thus believe that the key to stronger growth and prosperity that is available to and shared by all Bahamians is the creation of a knowledge-based society. Accordingly, my government is aggressively pursuing the many actions that it has identified to fundamentally reform and strengthen our system of education and training. And I must commend the Minister of Education a young man from Camp Road who has taken on that challenge and is doing an excellent job.
Yes.
Our nation requires an educational system that is efficient and effective in properly preparing our children and youth for the challenges of competing in the global economy of the 21st century. Our vision for the future in this area was clearly set out in our 2017 manifesto, as well as in the speech from the throne. Some of our key action plans include implementing specialized programs to equip youth with essential job-related skills and promote employment opportunities, mandating preschool learning for all 2.5-year-olds, ensuring the availability of adequately staffed and equipped preschool facilities in all family islands where practicable, establishing a new national apprenticeship scheme, enhancing the provision of specialty education, and expanding technical and vocational education. It is our intent, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we do not neglect our young Bahamians. The upcoming budget exercise will speak to tangible steps that my government will take to substantially increase our investment in opportunities for young people to get an education, get trained in a commercial and artisanal skill, or obtain the funding to start or expand their business. Our young people will see what a caring and compassionate government can get done to create real opportunities for them to succeed. Mr. Speaker, it is more than evident that such a relatively weak potential rate of economic growth is completely inadequate to the needs of Bahamian society and workers, both those seeking full-time employment and those entering the labor force every year. Our overriding philosophy that inspires the action plans that we are implementing is that it is not mostly government, but rather the private sector and entrepreneurs who drive growth. That growth is to be driven primarily by Bahamian investment and creativity, especially that of Bahamian small businesses, in tandem with strategic foreign investment. To that end, And as I mentioned earlier, we are moving to significantly improve both the ease of doing business and the business environment. We seek to transform our economy into one that is productive and competitive and capable of competing successfully in the global environment. We will transform our public sector to make it efficient and client-centered. In that vein, we are transforming and modernizing the state-owned enterprises to make them efficient and self-sustaining. We will invest in public infrastructure that spurs economic activity. We will redress the public finances and promote fiscal discipline. My government, Mr. Speaker, has a clear and well-articulated vision for the future. As set out in our 2017 manifesto and the speech from the throne, our vision and action plan will bring stronger economic growth and employment opportunities for the benefit of all Bahamians. All. And I want to stress again, Mr. Speaker, all. You listening? All. You smiling? All. You agree? All. Indeed. I don't know which girls you're talking about. Which one? The ones I saw you out last night? Anyhow, let's carry. Indeed, Mr. Speaker. I withdraw that, Mr. Speaker. That's not true. Indeed, we have seen clear that addressing the dire conditions in our inner communities and giving them access to public services comparable to those offered to citizens elsewhere in our country is a central priority of my government. Mr. Speaker, I wish to offer an update on the restoration efforts for Ragged Island. The well-known Rocky Mountain Institute has completed techno-economic modeling for the Ragged Island electrical grid. This modeling is known as the Homer model. Homer models are widely accepted as one of the most trusted and advanced methods for modeling the addition of renewable energy resources into existing microgrids. The proposed solar array and battery storage system will provide 95% of Ragged Island's electrical needs, with the existing diesel generators remaining functional for backup power when solar production falls short due to bad weather. The budget for the proposed system is $2 million US. Savings incurred from reduced fuel consumption and operating costs will be roughly $270,000 per year, achieving system payback in less than 6 years.
That's futuristic enough for you?
I will advise later on how this matter proceeds. We are determined to make Ragged Island a model for renewable energy as we rebuild that island. You won't enjoy it, though. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to transform one of the most challenged areas of New Providence, the government of the Bahamas, through the Office of the Prime Minister and in close coordination with the Ministry of Finance and other ministries and agencies, launched the Over the Hill Community Development Partnership Initiative in 2017.
A show, too.
We have devised our Over the Hill initiative to include historic neighborhoods from Nassau Street to Collins Avenue, and as far north as the Lancy Street and south to Wolf Road. Mr. Speaker, we intend to continue such projects in phases. Next, as we progress, we St. Barnabas,
Right behind it.
I was wondering where you were.
then,
I was jealous.
then Angliston, sections of Fox Hill, Rock Crusher,
Yes.
Gambia, now, I have to ask my cabinet colleagues, you know, when we zone in the areas, I live near Gambia.
No, no.
So I must be in the Gambia. Anyhow.
Don't qualify.
And other underprivileged areas. This project seeks to prioritize government investment and revitalize the area with a focus on economic empowerment, social empowerment, green technology, general restoration, smart technology, generational empowerment, and promoting Bahamian heritage and culture. While the program is still in its initial phase, which includes assessment and smaller restoration efforts, the project has already begun to produce tangible results in the Bain and Grantstown and Centerville communities. I wish to emphasize that this is a government and nonpartisan initiative.
Yes.
It is one in which there is collaboration with academia, civil society, the church, and the residents of the various communities. In the first phase of the restoration and cleanup effort launched in January 2018, the project provided employment opportunities for over 100 residents and for businesses in the Bain and Grantstown and Centerville areas. In fact, on the first few days of the cleanup exercise, more than 13,000 square meters of bulk waste was removed from the area, enough to cover, I am told, maybe 6 football fields. I don't know what size those football fields are.
Regular size.
As promised, legislation is in the final stages of drafting to ensure residents and businesses in the inner city are provided with the opportunities to thrive. This involves providing tax concessions and other benefits to the over-the-hill communities. This initiative will be detailed in a forthcoming white paper outlining the strategy to revitalize the over-the-hill community. Mr. Speaker, I can say that the OPM officials have been working closely with my office and the Financial Secretary to ensure that the tax proposals will be meaningful yet prudent. We have compared the offerings of other initiatives like the historic Nassau Rejuvenation Initiative and other initiatives that have benefited downtown and the Family Islands. We will offer concessions with respect to stamp duties for property purchases, property taxes for participating residents and business owners, and customs duty exemptions, materials and equipments to construct and rehabilitate buildings, and custom discount on vehicles for certain businesses. And exemption on business license. We must, of course, also be mindful of the potential for fraud. Hence, the program will not seek to inadvertently encourage black markets for goods for sale or assets that are easily moved from location to location. We don't want anything purchased at Baintown in the day and moving to St. Anne's at night.
That'll never happen.
Or wherever. We will also have to expand for technology to monitor that exemption approvals are being properly used. Mr. Speaker, this project is a transformative one. As such, this government has made a commitment to allocate at least $5 million per year towards this initiative as of the new budget year starting on the 1st of July 2018. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance dealt at length with the state of our public finances and the fiscal mess that was left to us by our predecessors. As such, I will focus my remarks in the area on a few selected matters. It is an undeniable, though unfortunate reality, that the fiscal hand that has been dealt to us by our predecessors severely limits our room to maneuver in the very near term. Indeed, if we are to secure and strengthen the international standing and the future prosperity of this nation, we are giving immediate and urgent priority to a fundamental and durable restructuring of our public finances. Doing so is critical to securing the government's ability to implement its reform, modernization, and growth agenda in a responsible and fiscally sustainable way during the course of our 5-year mandate. Mr. Speaker, the crux of the current problem is a level of government operational spending on programs and services that is out of line with the revenues that are available. This gives rise to the unsustainable fiscal position that we inherited. Its resolution requires determined action in the near term and going forward to bring spending and revenues back in balance. Over time, as our growth agenda begins to bear fruit in the form of more buoyant economic growth and job creation, revenues will, of course, also be bolstered. This will pave the way for fiscally sustainable higher levels of spending on critical programs and services. This brings me to a brief discussion of my government's plan of action to redress the imbalance between spending and revenue. Mr. Speaker, in the mid-year budget statement, the Minister of Finance laid out a number of new initiatives that my government is implementing to this end during the course of this fiscal year. For the sake of brevity, I will focus on two of these major initiatives, mainly the review of expenditure programs and fiscal responsibility legislation. Mr. Speaker, as the Cabinet mandated in July of last year, ministries and departments are implementing a 10% reduction in operational spending from projected levels going forward. They are engaged in an in-depth and fundamental review and assessment of government programs and services across the board. Many of these have been on the books for years and are well overdue for a fresh review as to their effectiveness as well as to the efficiency of their delivery. I cannot stress strong enough the importance of this exercise and how committed my Cabinet colleagues and I are to its success. Achieving such a permanent level of savings will admittedly be challenging. It will require tough decisions and trade-offs. Thus, ministers individually and cabinet as a whole will drive this process directly and decisively in order to secure the needed fiscal savings that have been identified. During the term of the previous administration and in light of the persistent and alarming fiscal deficits that they incurred, we heard repeated calls for the introduction of fiscal responsibility legislation. My government believes that such legislation can usefully serve to constrain the ability of governments to engage in excessive spending above and beyond the levels approved by Parliament, and also serve as a legal check on the ability of a government to run up unwarranted annual deficits above and beyond budgetary projections. Accordingly, we are striving to finalize fiscal responsibility legislation for tabling in Parliament at the time of the next budget communication. I would only wish to emphasize at this time my government's firm resolve to implement such a law as a practical constraint on governments that will facilitate and secure the move toward the elimination of the GFS deficit and the return of the burden of government debt to lower, more sustainable and appropriate levels. I believe that a law of this type will serve to improve the government's budgeting process by instilling a greater sense of realism and urgency into the exercise. Mr. Speaker, the land unit office within the office of the Prime Minister is mandated with the responsibility of facilitating the acquisition of private land for essential public purposes. Some of the essential public purposes for which private land is acquired by the government are as follows: the construction of schools, police and fire stations, the construction of hospitals and clinics, the construction of affordable housing, major touristic developments, harbors to promote the country's touristic traffic, road development, expansion of open green spaces, public parks, public recreational facilities, the protection of monuments. The land unit, Mr. Speaker, also has the responsibility of facilitating the disposition of government land vested in the Treasurer of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas within the guidelines specified in the Ministry of Finance Act. It should be noted that both the acquisition and disposition processes require a considerable amount of coordination between relevant government agencies. According to the records of the land unit, at the commencement of the 2017-18 fiscal period, it was estimated that an excess of $6.7 million was owed as a result of compulsory land acquisition for the purpose of road improvement for various corridors. The estimated figures were as a result of land acquired as far back as 2011. However, it should be noted that in an effort to ascertain a better scope of money owed for land acquisitions nationwide, a further investigation of all records is necessary given the myriad matters pending. It is proposed that in view of the inordinate amount of time elapsed from the date of some of the earliest compulsory acquisitions, that unused parcels acquired by the government are returned to affected individuals. It is proposed, Mr. Speaker, that wherever it is deemed to be feasible, the government will seek to return land acquired that has not been utilized back to claimants who are determined by the Office of the Attorney General to possess clear and marketable titles. Mr. Speaker, a decision has been made to include a representative of the land unit to serve as a part of a specially formed land committee for the purpose of identifying suitable available Crown and government land for use within government's new housing initiative. I also note that the government will discontinue sale of Crown keys to private individuals. Yes. We will preserve the seabed for the Crown, approving only leases of the seabed. We will retain for the Crown a Crown reserve between Ocean Sea, front inland lake property, granted for private development where unalienated Crown land exists at the seashore to preserve windows to the sea and open green and open green and beachfront spaces for the enjoyment of the public. We will regularize long-term occupation of Crown land development or cultivated by individual Bahamians and or families at concessionary rates. We will make Crown land available to Bahamian nationals for residential, commercial, and touristic development, particularly in the Family Islands. We will make Crown land available at appropriate rates to developers, domestic and foreign, with a demonstrated ability to finance and carry out economic development projects with significant economic benefits to the Bahamian economy. And, Mr. Speaker, the transfer of Crown land to the minister responsible for housing to facilitate the development of government residential subdivisions, particularly in communities and on islands with housing shortages, by the Ministry of Housing. A new land reform unit will be established to examine, organize, and monitor all activities related to our reform agenda. This will include the execution of policy guidelines provided by the ministry responsible for lands and survey, assessment of the current application review and approval system, liaison with other government agencies concerning the reform of land statutes, design of criteria for considering applications based on policy directives to effect economic empowerment and social development through the grant and lease of Crown land. It has been agreed, Mr. Speaker, that the land unit will maintain a presence on the government's new land committee that has commenced with efforts to identify available parcels of Crown land for use within the new housing policy. Mr. Speaker, we will commence a land audit in the land owned by BAIC, agriculture, the Crown. Mr. Speaker, all lands obtained are not used for what it was intended to be used for will be returned to the Bahamian people. There are some individuals, Mr. Speaker, who would have obtained the government crown land in the amount of 500 acres in excess of 1,000 acres. It is not right that Bahamians trying to own 60 by 80, but yet, or 60 by 100, are unable to obtain just a piece of what they desire. Yet individuals would have sitting on over 1,000 acres of government property. I put all those individuals on notice because the land will come back home to the people. Mr. Speaker, Grand Bahama has been a major focus of my government. We will continue to work toward the complete restoration of that island. If we truly want the Bahamas to succeed, Grand Bahama must succeed. The result of the most recent labor force survey of the Department of Statistics for Grand Bahama from May 2017 to November 2017 does indicate some progress. We saw in Grand Bahama a slight decrease in the unemployment rate from 12.4% to 12.1%. There are still too many unemployed, but the rate is trending in the right direction. It should be noted that there was a significant increase in employment individuals in Grand Bahama. The number of people employed in May 2017 in Grand Bahama was 26,160, and that number increased to 27,240 in November 2017. We still need more job growth, but it does suggest that 1,080 more people are working, which means the numbers are moving in the right direction. We also successfully negotiated with Bahamas Paradise on the return of the Grand Celebration and the introduction of a new vessel, the Grand Classica, which will bring additional stopover visitors and even more opportunities to Grand Bahama in April. We also negotiated an airlift agreement with Sunwing and now have the return of Vacation Express. It has been announced that a total of 8 non-stop flights departing from various U.S. cities will begin their flight schedules in May 2018. Flights from Detroit, Chicago, Nashville, Pittsburgh, Newark, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Dallas will be operated by Swift Air, LLC. The Ministry of Tourism projects yielding a potential 16,800 visitors or passengers. The Grand Lucayan deal is progressing. In December, the Paul Wynn and the Wynn Development Group signed a letter of intent and immediately began negotiations with the government on a heads of agreement. These negotiations are not yet complete and involve putting together not just the sale of assets, but the right components which will provide a unique destination for the island. It involves arriving at an agreement on a number of complex issues that must be resolved. The government is confident that it is doing all it can to complete the deal and move the renovations and full opening of the Grand Lucayan. My government is especially energized about ventures in East and West Grand Bahama, including the former GIN project acquired by the Grand Palm Beach Acquisitions. Grand Beach Acquisitions Limited proposes to construct, repair, revitalize, develop, and operate 246 rooms in 3 hotels, a banquet facility, 116 branded hotel residences, 1,000 other residences, a hotel casino site, approximately 150,000 square feet of shops and restaurants, a spa and wellness retreat, 2 marinas, and a 18-hole golf course. My government has granted an approval in principle and are in active negotiations on a heads of agreement. There are also a number of smaller developments in tourism, light manufacturing, financial services, entertainment, and a $180 million expansion at Pharma Chem, one of our major industrial companies that are well on their way for Grand Bahama. We are also pleased to see Bahamian business expansion in Grand Bahama, particularly the Pirates Cove zip line, along with other businesses expanding and hiring staff. My government has embarked upon a major mission to diversify our economy, provide employment for Bahamians at home and abroad, and provide that critical mass or population for Grand Bahama by establishing the Bahamas, particularly Grand Bahama Island, as a leading technology hub. This past November, through our first ever Grand Bahama Technology Summit, we started on a path to realize this goal. It was simply inspiring, not just for me, but my government, private businesses, entrepreneurs, and students. As a result, Grand Bahama has already begun welcoming tech companies who have answered the call, and we look forward to even more technology companies choosing Grand Bahama as a home. In December, the government appointed a Tech Hub Steering Committee, which was tasked with making full recommendations for the government. I am pleased to say they have completed and have made the recommendations to government. Mr. Speaker, the government is currently considering recommendations which involve legislation for a Headquarters Encouragement Act, streamlining the application processes for business license for tech companies, making it easier for Bahamian tech startup companies to access funding, amending our education curricula to focus on technology, making our local University of Bahamas campus the nation's technology center, and marketing Grand Bahama as a technology hub. The government is also presently using ways to attract companies, not only with our proximity and infrastructure, but also allowing companies to bring their highly skilled and specialized talent to come with the company. This will provide training opportunities for Bahamians and will provide incentives for Bahamians abroad to come home. Based on the success of our first Grand Bahama Technology Summit, the government, along with the Technology Steering Committee, has committed to making the conference an annual one in November. To date, the Office of the Prime Minister, Grand Bahama, along with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, has hosted 2 groups of the Micro and Small Business Grant Program. Applicants interested in starting a business or growing their existing business had the opportunity to participate in a 2-week-long business readiness training course, where they gained insightful business management tips like bookkeeping, customer service, and marketing. Upon completion of training, program participants were invited to pitch their businesses to a panel for a chance to be awarded up to $5,000 for their business. So far, 45 startup and existing businesses were awarded grant funding. and are being assigned business mentors. Mr. Speaker, the government is moving the proposal. Travis, you want to listen to this? The government is reviewing the proposal for the redevelopment of the southern recreational ground. The works include building repairs and refurbishment of existing structures, new playground equipment, parking lots, and drainage for the park. Travis. The Speaker, this is the transformation that's occurring on the southern transformation that will be occurring on the southern recreation ground. The private sector, Mr. Speaker, the private sector has already made a commitment to donate $1 million. Wow. To the restoration project. And for those who want to see the full and complete restoration of the southern recreation ground, at 8 p.m. tonight, on Cable 12, ZNS, and JCN, it will be launched.
We're going to be banned down for life.
He got a long life.
And you a young boy.
He got a long life.
It's going to be a long time.
He might beat my father's record.
After,
Oh, sorry, you want to
yeah, I want to keep one out.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone? No, this one. Yeah. Travis, I think y'all want to keep that up. After, after Easter, Mr. Speaker, we intend to have a town meeting on the southern recreation ground to explain to the community what they can expect and their involvement. Angliston.
We love you, man. We love you. You was qualified. We love you. You can come over. I know you can help. We can get you too.
Yeah, man. Don't forget, don't.
Neglected Camp Road for you.
Angliston and I are cousins, you know. We just salt and pepper, but we cousins. Angliston, you know I still love you. We are hoping that after completion, a similar project will be launched in Angliston.
Wow. Yes. I gotta watch out in Montella.
Mr. Speaker, so I ask and I urge all Bahamians at 8 o'clock after the news, watch the various TV stations, ZNS, Cable 12, and JCN. so that we and you can see the launch of the Southern Recreational Ground and what is to be expected with our inner city.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Speaker, we are proceeding with plans for the removal of several shanty towns. To better ensure that my government's vision is enacted, I have created a delivery unit in the office of the Prime Minister. In 2016, the government of the Bahamas agreed to receive a loan facility from the Inter-American Development Bank for the Public Financial Management Performance Monitoring Reform Loan. The main objective of the loan was twofold: to improve financial management in the public sector and to increase the government's capacity to monitor and implement key projects. There are 4 components to the loan: national statistics, public financial management, public procurement, and performance management. The government's establishment of the delivery unit in collaboration with the IDB is in fulfillment of the performance management component of the loan. It establishes at the center of government, in the office of the Prime Minister, a better capacity to monitor and coordinate priority projections and programs of the government more effectively. The delivery unit and the ICT system will support our government ministries in their planning processes to deliver key projects, problem solving, capacity building, coordination and monitoring of the progress on the government's delivery of public service priorities. The initiative is meant to drive performance and embed a culture focused on outcomes. As part of this, the government will develop a state-of-the-art information, communications, and technology system to facilitate the collection, collation, and analysis of data, as well as the monitoring and evaluation of national priority projects. It will allow us to measure what has not regularly been measured and will provide a real-time, independent view of performance to the Prime Minister and his ministers. This delivery approach is not being invented for the Bahamas. It is a methodology employed with successes by governments throughout Europe, North America, Latin America, and here in the Caribbean. The delivery unit will be staffed with the best talent from within the public service and private sector. Presently, Mr. Speaker, we had recruited a young, energetic, vibrant, and intelligent young lady, Ms. Viana Gardner, to head such unit. The first tranche of key priorities for the unit are, in no particular order, the over-the-hill initiative, land reform, energy reform and infrastructure, the ease of doing business, education, and safety and security. Mr. Speaker, presently, there's an office of the Prime Minister both in Abaco and Grand Bahama. And I work out of both offices about once per month. I'm also establishing an office in Exuma. Because Exuma is growing rapidly. I've looked at the existing medical clinic that is not being utilized in Exuma, Georgetown, and discussing with my colleagues the possibility of converting that facility to the office of the Prime Minister. once that is done, Mr. Speaker, I will be visiting and working in Exuma quarterly, and will have in the office a young, what we call junior advisor to the Prime Minister, a young engineer, whom you know very well, Navarro Bow. Who will?
Got a plan.
So let me inform Exuma now. Navarro Bohm, working at the office of the Prime Minister, will lead the new airport. Not you. Huh? Oh. Mr. Speaker, I'll also establish an office in Eleuthera and Andros. Mr. Speaker, I found this very, very helpful because it allows me to hear first-handedly what issues the individuals are facing and whether we can deal with those issues right then. That's right. So those individuals save monies on accommodation, plane ticket, having to travel to New Providence. And accompanying me, the staff member who is somewhat attached to the Liverpool unit, whose responsibility is to ensure that whatever commitment or we say is delivered.
Yes.
This is a delivery doctor.
So that when we return to these various islands, we can say how far we've progressed or whether it's completed.
Tracking.
But it's all a matter of tracking.
All transformation.
Mr. Speaker, it's bad when you write and you can't read your own handwriting, you know.
The doctor.
He's a doctor.
You're the nurse.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, I, along with the minister responsible for investment and immigration, will travel to Inagua. We will meet with Defense Force that's stationed there, based there, and with residents of Inagua. We will determine and try to find out what are their issues and concerns and how they feel about the establishment of a detention center there in Inagua. We cannot, Mr. Speaker, afford to bring migrants all the way from Inagua, Mayaguana to New Providence and travel back to wherever they may have come from. That must be a thing of the past.
Yep.
And therefore, we would also take that opportunity to thank those residents for cooperating and reporting those illegal migrants that were on their shores and assisting with the apprehension. Mr. Speaker, that is true and real Bahamian. Mr. Speaker, in life, the mistakes we make are not the end of the story for an individual, a group, or a nation. The test of character and vision is how we overcome our challenges. The test of character is our capacity for growth. As a government, we must admit error and make the necessary changes to improve our government. We do so. We do so not primarily for political reasons. We do so because we have a mandate and some obligation to improve the lives of our citizens and to improve opportunities of new generations. We do so, Mr. Speaker. We do so in order to build a better Bahamas. I thank my ministers, fellow parliamentarians, and public officers for all they have done in the past year to move the Bahamas in a new direction. I am proud of our good work. Let us resolve to do even better on behalf of those who repose their confidence in us. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God bless the good people of the Bahamas.
As many as the chair on the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you.
You want a point of order?
Clarification.
Clarification.
Yeah, on comments made by the Prime Minister. Say, as you allowed others to do after.
No.
Prime Minister spoke.
Hold on. What are you seeking to clarify? Something that was said regarding your speech?
Yes, specifically.
What specifically are you seeking to clarify?
Specifically on the question of Oban. I spoke about Oban. I raised the questions about Oban. The minister addressed Oban. The one question that he did not clarify in respect that came out of my speech is on North. Whether or not he intended to continue with the project. I note, no, he did not say that, Mr. Speaker. What I heard him to say was that Mr. Krieger resigned on March, on the 1st of March, right, the 1st of March, and Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members.
The other point, first of all, Mr. Speaker, he indicated that Mr. Krieger resigned on the 1st of March. Right? He indicated that Oban.
You're seeking clarification on whether he. Honourable members. Are you seeking clarification on whether the government will proceed with the project?
Mr. Speaker, I want to, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I raised some questions about Oban in my contribution. All of the questions were not answered. That's the first point. That's the first point.
Well,
and I'm seeking to know whether the government will answer those questions.
Honorable member, what I would recommend.
Furthermore,
What I would recommend, honorable members, that you list your questions, and you put forth your questions, and the government will respond accordingly.
Speaker, this is why, Mr. Speaker, this is why the question about what is allowed by us, what is allowed by them comes up. Right? The member for Carmichael and others were able to come up and explain some things. For example, the member speaks about the approval given by our administration.
Honorable member.
Am I going to be allowed to respond, Mr. Speaker?
No, you are honorable member.
The member didn't say that. All that's
Honorable member. Honorable members. The chair recommends that any questions that any member may have can be put forward. Honorable member. Well, any clarification with respect to any misinterpretation of any of your speech is permitted. But certainly what is not permitted is for a member to raise questions that are unrelated to the speech, his speech. As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, first permit me to say that the true character of a man is one who will admit that he's made a mistake, to correct it, and to move on. I think our Prime Minister, the member for Kalani today, has acquitted himself and his government tremendously well. And I just want to congratulate him for his forthrightness. Mr. Speaker, I now move with your permission, move the adoption of the resolution. And with your permission, I'd like to read just the first and the last paragraphs.
Yes.
Whereas Article 129(1) of the Constitution requires the Minister of Finance, before the end of each financial year, to cause to be prepared annual estimates of revenue and expenditure for public services during the succeeding fiscal year, which shall be laid before the House of Assembly, and which estimates have been laid before the House of Assembly. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House, 1, authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise by way of loan or loans the sum of $100 million in the aggregate in such currency as the Minister may determine. 2, authorize the Minister to raise such amounts by way of A, the creation and issue of stock under the provisions of the Bahamas Registered Stock Act, Chapter 362, B, loan agreements with banks, including commercial banks, on such terms as are mutually agreed, and C, the issue of bonds under the provisions of the Development Loan Act, Chapter 382, subject to the provisions that the total sum borrowed under paragraph B does not exceed the sum of $100 million necessary to replenish resources expended to invest in Bahamas Resolve Limited, and the House receives communication from the Minister of Finance at the earliest opportunity after the apportionment among A, B, and C, and 3, approves the proceeds of the said loans being used for the purpose of defraying expenditure relating to the investment in Bahamas Resolve Limited. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
It has been moved and seconded that the resolution be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who are opposed will stand. The resolution is agreed. Further resolutions? The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By way of agreement with the opposition, it was agreed that we would address this next resolution without debate, as comments would have been included in the previous debate on the statement and the resolution just agreed. Yes? I now move, Mr. Speaker, for the agreement of the following resolution. Whereas by Section 3(1) of the Loans Inter-American Development Bank Act, Chapter 355 of the Revised Statute Law of the Bahamas 2000, the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas may, in such manner and on such terms and subject to such conditions as may be agreed between the government and the Inter-American Development Bank, hereinafter the bank, borrow from the bank or from funds administered by the bank such sums as may be required for the purpose of financing or promoting economic and social development in the Bahamas. And whereas the bank has agreed to grant to the government financing up to the amount of $90 million in the currency of the United States of America for the purpose of financing projects in support of coastal management, airport infrastructure, and developing appropriate skills for jobs as follows: climate resilient coastal management and infrastructure, $35 million, skills for current and future jobs, $20 million, airport infrastructure programs, $35 million. And whereas the projects are expected to undertake inter alia the following activities: A, creating natural barriers to address coastal erosion; B, construction of seawalls on Grand Bahama and New Providence; C, construction and or improvements to the existing terminals and runways at North Eleuthera, Treasure Key, Abaco, Marsh Harbor, Abaco, and Exuma; D, enhancement of the labor process to ensure that job seekers are qualified and prepared for the labor market; and E, construction of new facilities for the Ministry of Labor. And whereas the Minister of Finance proposes to raise the sum of $90 million in the currency of the United States of America by means of a loan from the Inter-American Development Bank, and whereas Section 18 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act 2010, it is provided that no loan shall be raised by the government unless entered into with the prior approval of the House of Assembly, signified by resolution thereof. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House, 1, authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise by means of a loan the sum of $90 million in the currency of the United States of America, and 2, authorize the Minister of Finance to raise such loans by means of a loan contract with the Inter-American Development Bank on such terms pursuant to this resolution as are mutually agreed. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
It has been moved and seconded that the resolution tabled on the 7th of February 2018, just read, be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The resolution is agreed. Further resolutions? Member statements? The chair recognizes the honourable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise to extend heartfelt condolences to the mother and siblings and extended family of now, and it doesn't even sound right to say it, the late Teresa Moxie Ingram, whose mother lives in the Grove area, which is part of my constituency. Her mother, in her own right, who's still with us, and unfortunately will have to go through this experience of burying her daughter, is one of our distinguished citizens and was, I think, the originator of the library in the Grove, in the Coconut Grove area, and was in that library for a very long time and mentored so many young people and was such an inspiration to so many young people who went to the library to access books and information. her daughter, Teresa, and all of her daughters have done well. But in my view, Teresa is a special daughter because not just to her mother, but to Bahamaland. Teresa was a very interesting personality. She was a hardcore political warrior, free national movement to the core. However, she had a level of independence to her principal views that you don't see much in politics anymore. She was able, in a lot of ways, to break away when she saw it necessary in support of her principal positions. And you saw it on the issues that affected women. She was a strong advocate during the referendum process. When the Free National Movement, her own party, was a little wishy-washy on that, Teresa Moxie took to the forefront as a strong and voice advocating for equality for women in this country. And I watched her I remember seeing her, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, even during the early days when the Bahamas was involved in the anti-apartheid movement, which my mother at that time headed, and there were many others involved. Teresa Moxie Ingram, might have been just Moxie then, was right there speaking out on that issue, on an international issue, and taking a strong position in our own country. She was highly intelligent. She was brilliant, brilliant woman. But at the same time, there was an earthiness about her. She was just this unusual mix of high accomplishment, high ability, high talent, but with her feet on the ground. And so I've spoken about her before in this house, and I spoke about her most recently in the radio. I just didn't imagine we'd be giving condolences to her family. But I, as a woman in the political realm, and there are only a few of us, a handful of us, I want to pay tribute, homage, respect, regard, love to the life of Teresa Moxie Ingram. I want to thank her for cutting a path that was unique to herself, for standing tall, even in a difficult environment like the political environment where women struggle for respect, for standing tall, and for representing Bahamian women with such conviction and with such courage. And I want to extend to her mother, who's my constituent, heartfelt condolences to her and to her family and her sisters and her wider family, and to the community at large, and to women throughout this country. And I think she was a member of the Lodge. She was an educator. She was a politician. Even on the gaming issue, she broke away from her organization, and she was one of the chief proponents for legalizing or rationalizing the gaming industry. Yeah. She served with us, that's right, on the gender equality issue. She served on a bipartisan basis. You know, I'm going to sit down and just say, I just pray that as we move forward as a people, we see more and more participants in the political process. And it's not easy, because I'm a member myself, and I probably fall in prey to it myself from time to time. But those who are able to remain faithful to principle, even if it means putting a little distance between the political organization and yourself. And so she has now completed her journey, Mr. Speaker. It's at the end. And we can look back and see that she was someone who took a stand over and over in this country, Mr. Speaker. I extend heartfelt condolences to her family.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Garden Hills.
Mr. Speaker, I too would like to extend condolences to the family of Teresa Moxie Ingram. Teresa and I kind of grew up together in the teaching profession. She was a soldier of the highest order, Mr. Speaker. She set a foundation for young Bahamians that could be unmatched. She was tough. And like my colleague said, she was a trailblazer for the things she believed in. And I remember, Mr. Speaker, when she was about to really get into politics. And she was not somebody who stood on the sidelines. She was instrumental, I believe, in writing the first manifesto for the Free National Movement. She didn't take any prisoners. She was fearless. And Mr. Speaker, I was honored when she was elected in 1992. She called me one day and said to me, Brensel, I want you to work on a project for me. The Prime Minister has given me the responsibility to stop leasing of taxi plates. And she said I had to make a choice between going to the Ministry of Works at the time where I, because of my study background, was perhaps going to the Ministry of Works. And I said, when you're trained in urban planning, you know, you could deal with taxi drivers. And she pulled me into the Ministry of Transport. That was an official first cabinet post. And I watched her, Mr. Speaker. In essence, what she did in that first term was unbelievable. There was approximately 500 taxi drivers who were leasing their plates. And you know the story of leasing, Mr. Speaker. And she made a considered position. She said, you could touch any plate except where a widow was involved, because they need the money. They need to live. And all I want you to do is to make sure whoever has that plate, make sure they could buy a taxi, buy a vehicle, and I will not touch their plate. And so, Mr. Speaker, today I am humbled. And I did not expect her to leave us this early. But her work is done. She did a wonderful task. She accomplished very much in a short lifetime, Mr. Speaker. And I say to her family, you will see her again. You will see her because she made sure that she lived for her God. I would also, Mr. Speaker, like to extend condolences to the Darwell family, another teacher who taught in the public schools, and her husband passed last week, and he would be buried this week. So to his family in Blue Hill Estates, I say condolence to all of you, and may God continue to bless you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is truly a very sad day in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And I rise simply to pay respects to a giant of a Bahamian who was not really big in stature. When we consider the development and growth of the Bahamas, we think about luminaries, we think about politicians, we think about a number of people. But there's a single individual, George Cox, who has put his hand on virtually every single structure in the modern Bahamas, whether we're talking the Paradise Island Bridge, Glass Window Bridge, all of the major public buildings, etc., certainly from the time of independence and beyond. This giant of a man who was quiet, he was a gentleman, he was a family man, was predeceased by his wife, who was a charismatic character, Satella. And he leaves behind his son, John Edward, and his wife, Erica, and their 2 children. I think the Bahamas, this is an inauspicious day for us, but I think he will be remembered for the contributions that he has made in building this wonderful country. May he rest in peace.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to extend condolences to the family of the late Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. Mr. Speaker, she was a leader before my time, but she was a woman that I would have watched as a young girl, and I would have looked up to her and the various women, as Angliston said, who served small numbers in the House. And so I want to support Angliston in paying respects to Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. Mr. Speaker, she is known, from what I have observed, to be one of stellar performance, integrity, and character. Mr. Speaker, when I was appointed to the Senate, she was one of the first women to call me, and I never spoke with her before, and she called me over the phone and said, "I want you to come and see me." And I didn't know what she was going to say because I didn't know her. But this is a type of humility that she showed. And I went and I visited her, and she says, "What you're going through is nothing that women in Parliament haven't gone through, and this too shall pass, and you're going to be all right." And so those moments are so near and dear to me, and that is what I remember her for. And so not only knowing and seeing her far off, I had the opportunity to speak with her and hear her heart. And so today it grieves me. I've heard of her passing, it grieved me, and I'm sure the entire Free National Movement community, particularly the women, because all of the women of the FNM, they are my heroes, and they who I've looked up to. And not only the FNM, to be quite honest, in this place, as well as the Progressive Liberal Party. Coming through this House, Mr. Speaker, in small numbers were women are and were women of great integrity, great strength, and great service, Mr. Speaker. And no one knows what it takes out of us to sit in this kind of world and to work in this kind of world. But, Mr. Speaker, we have been graced to do it. And so we ought to show respect where there should be respect and where it is due. And so, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the women of the Free National Movement, as well as all of the women of the Bahamas, I want to salute the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram, the late, and extend condolences to her family. I say, may the soul of the dearly departed rest in peace.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the member for Angliston would have said, the late Teresa Moxie Ingram is a member of her constituency, and the Grove itself is divided between, yes, St. Barnabas and Angliston. But indeed, the Grove is one community. One community it is. And so, as the member of Parliament for St. Barnabas, I'd like to extend my condolences to her family on her passing, and just to say that I would have had the opportunity over the last 10 years to talk to the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram, and there was no doubt of her commitment to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and she was a principled woman. And she is indeed one of those persons who will always be remembered for how she illuminated the corridors of Bahamian history. I have 3 daughters, Mr. Speaker, one who at 16 is interested in politics, even at her early age. And I point to persons like Teresa Moxie Ingram and others, like the member of Angliston, who's been around a long time.
Warrior.
Long time. Who continues to serve the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and that there is no limit to what you can give your country, not even your gender. Also, Mr. Speaker, I also want to extend my condolences to Meritorious Council Member William Bullard, his family, who passed. He passed today. Yeah, he passed today. William Bullard was a giant of a man, a staple of the Free National Movement, a freedom fighter. And so I'm sure that I join with all of my colleagues here in extending condolences to his entire family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Having participated in the artistic community in the Bahamas for a number And some religious leaders are much louder than they ought to be. And so there are many other persons who hail from other areas of national life who are not taken seriously. And so when cultural artists appear on programs, most times we are viewed as the bridge in between the serious discussion on the program. Teresa Moxie Ingram was one of those persons who made the point, whether you were giving the keynote speech or you were the storyteller, the poet, the singer, you had a voice and a perspective that was equally as important as the political voice, the religious voice. And so she really validated a lot of persons who were in the arts, and I'm certainly one of them, and I'm eternally grateful to her. I went to school with Bridget and Sophia, so obviously we all grew up knowing of this charismatic woman who was fearless, who spoke her mind. And in a country where people are often very pretentious and their initial statements on the surface do not reflect what they really think about you and how they feel about you, you always have an extra measure of appreciation for somebody like Teresa Moxie Ingram, who I have found to speak her mind to your face and otherwise. And then finally, we grew up really in the same neighborhood. I grew up in Angliston, obviously, and spent a lot of time in Yellow Elder and Fox Hill, but in Angliston, that's a family that is really well known and greatly respected and appreciated. And so I know that the entire community really mourns with us. And so to the family of Teresa Moxie Ingram, I wish to extend my condolences and to salute her. She's a powerful Bahamian who just happened to have been female.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many would have heard me acknowledge that the morning after being appointed Minister of Transport and Local Government, I realized that I was no smarter than I was the day before. And I sought the assistance and guidance of persons from whom I believe useful information could be had. And realizing that the Honorable Teresa Moxie would have served in this capacity, I called her maybe a month after, and we were deep in conversation until I heard some noise in the background, and I asked what was that, and she indicated to me, oh, I'm in the hospital. And I was like, well, no, ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. I didn't realize you were in hospital. And she says to me, she says, Minister Campbell, I might be in hospital, but I could still talk. And as long as I have this breath, if there's anything I could do to help you that will help the Bahamas, then you will have my help. And we talked for a few minutes more, and then I allowed her to go on to get her rest. About a month and a half, she then reached out to me, indicating that she was out, and we continued our conversation. I had the privilege of knowing, well, I have the privilege of knowing Sophie and Bridget. So on behalf of a grateful nation, on my personal behalf, for what I know she would have done for the nation, for myself, the ministry in which I serve, I want to extend condolences to the family. Also, William Bullard, a staple in Southern Shores. As I walked through Southern Shores, we connected. He took a special liking to me. And as I was setting up my headquarters, he said, Mr. Campbell, whatever the electrical situations are, don't let anybody else touch it. I will deal with it. I was getting a bit impatient because he was involved in finishing some work on Paradise Island. And he said, listen, a deal is a deal. Don't let anybody else touch it. A week later, he came to me and said, you know, Campbell, I just don't have the time, but I still believe a man's word is his bond. So I brought an electrician, and he will do it, and I will pay him. He's one of my proteges. The Bahamas has lost two great giants, two persons who would have contributed in their own ways, different ways. The Free National Movement as a party is really and truly in mourning. And I'm just humbled and privileged to have this opportunity to extend condolences on behalf of myself, on behalf of the Constituency Association in Southern Shores, to both families, and I pray that their souls will rest in peace.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exumas and Ragged Island.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to endorse the previous condolences expressed to the family of the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. But I stand, Mr. Speaker, to congratulate young Pablo Smith of the Morstown Primary School, who placed third in the spelling bee on Sunday past. I congratulate him. I congratulate his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Randy Smith, for their coaching, their love and support of the young man. I had the opportunity of meeting him personally after his stellar performance last year, and there is no question in my mind that this young man has a very, very bright future ahead of him. So I send my congratulations on behalf of the Bahamas and all the people of Exuma and Ragged Island.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Gates.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, this is truly a sad day in Golden Gates. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram, when she ran for the first time, she ran in Golden Gates. She ran in 1992, Mr. Speaker, and she was successful. She ran in 1997, and she was successful. It is truly a sad day for the association in Golden Gates. Teresa was special. She was special to Golden Gates, and she was special to the Bahamas. You know, the Honorable Member for Angliston and many others have spoken about Teresa, her toughness, and that she was. Convicted, that she was. Plain speaking, that she was. To the point, that she was. But you know, Mr. Speaker, I've worked with Teresa Moxie Ingram for quite some time. When she ran in 2002, and she was not successful, I was her campaign manager. And soon after the election, she said to me, you know, Michael, I think you should perhaps consider Golden Gates, because this is it for me. I'm not running anymore. And the following month, at the first association meeting, she told the very same thing to the association. She said, I want you all to consider Michael. She has always been very supportive of me. And what a lot of people do not know about her is that in spite of the public persona that everyone knows, she was warm, she was friendly, she was down to earth, she was generous and kind. That is the Teresa a lot of people did not know. But clearly and undoubtedly, she was someone, if you had an issue to fight, to have in your corner. No question. Teresa was a fighter. And so, and pardon me, the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram was a fighter. And she will certainly be missed. You know, also, what a lot of people might not know, she was a young cabinet minister. In 1992, when she went in the cabinet. And she was either 37 or 38. Very young female cabinet minister. And she served till she was 48 in the cabinet. She served 2 terms in the cabinet, in the Hubert Ingram cabinet, the Honorable Hubert Ingram cabinet. And that was a proud moment and time for her. And she did well, as everyone said here today. And we in Golden Gates are very proud of her record and proud of what she has done in Golden Gates. And it'll be it's a great loss for us in Golden Gates. And I am proud to have succeeded her in Golden Gates, following a tenure where the seat was held by the other party. And it's a proud moment for me and for the association that we are where we are now in Golden Gates. And Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of Golden Gates, the Free National Movement Association Golden Gates, we offer our deepest and heartfelt sympathy and condolences to her family on her passing. May her soul rest in peace, and may perpetual light shine upon her. Mr. Speaker, I also want to mention, as the Honorable Member for St. Barnabas and the member for Southern Shores, another large F&M member for many, many years, Mr. William Bullard. And you know, Mr. William Bullard and the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram had something in common. They were both meritorious council members of the Free National Movement, both of them. There's no question, Mr. Bullard has given his life to the party over the years. We were always able to depend on him. You know, we all recall him well when we had the national fairs, and he would always set up all the booths with the electricity. And he always did a wonderful job. He enjoyed what he did, and he loved serving his party and serving this nation. He will be missed. They will both be missed. And a bit of a personal note, his wife, Mrs. Pearline Bullard, she taught to St. Thomas More Primary School for a very long time, I think about 40 years or perhaps more. And you know, most of my siblings and I practically all went through St. Thomas More. And she would always say whenever I saw her, or any of us saw her, you know, I taught all of you, I taught all of you. And she's a wonderful person. She's given a tremendous amount of her life to education, not only in the Catholic school system, but she then left there to go into the public school system and the government school system, and she taught to H.O. Nash for many years. I think she's now retired. And my deepest condolences to her and the entire family. And may Mr. Bullard's soul rest in peace. May perpetual light shine upon him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf of my family from Waterkey on the passing of my cousin Bertha Lyons from Bahamas Air. So to her daughter, Dawn Lyons, Senator, the Honorable Dawn Lyons, I spoke to her today, and she's not doing well. So those who know her personally could give her a call and offer words of comfort. I want to offer sincere condolences on my behalf and the entire family of Waterkey, and also may her soul rest in peace and one day rise in glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, want to give my condolences to the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. I didn't want to preempt the member for Golden Gates, as he and the Honorable Teresa Moxie were successful in their first run in Golden Gates. But, Mr. Speaker, history will remember that my first quote-unquote dance in politics was in Golden Gates following the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. And like so many other members have noted, one of the first things I would have done was call her and ask for advice. And she would have spent many hours giving me advice and continuously working with the association in Golden Gates. I must say that my experience in politics has been enriched by her advice, and as the member for Angliston and the member for Seabreeze, and I'm sure other members in our gallery, Irma Williams and others who were very close to her in the party, we would all say that there's no doubt that the entire country, not only the F&M, has lost a great and a wonderful soldier for the people. So I want to share in the sentiments of the member for Golden Gates, and I want to say that I would really much miss the Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram, and I want to on behalf of the people of Tall Pines, because it's because of her advice, it's because of her warmth and political gratitude to me that I'm able to represent Tall Pines now. So I want to say on behalf of the people of Tall Pines, our condolences, and also to our MCM Bullet, our condolences. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like members, honorable members, Mr. Speaker, I rise to also extend to the family the late Teresa Moxie Ingram, and to my dear friend and brother, George Cox. and to the meritorious member of our Free National Movement, Mr. Bullard. Heartfelt condolences on their passing. I have many memories of both Mr. Cox and Mrs. Ingram, and to a lesser extent, Mr. Bullard. And so I would be relatively brief in saying to their families, thank you for the gift of their lives and their witness to our Bahamian people and to the wider community. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to, this afternoon, extend to my cousins, Izzy and Annie and the family of Baratari Exuma on my sympathies and condolences on the passing of my, and you, my dear brother, honorable member for God Nils, the Honorable Brensel Roll, on the passing of Mrs. Annie Lloyd. She is a signature presence in Baratari. She is the wife of the late my cousin Raymond Lloyd, and she was a wonderful 94, 5 years young. She entered her eternal rest last evening. So, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my family and the great people of South Beach, to those who have departed, eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls, the souls of the faithful departed through the mercies of God, rest in peace.
With that, honorable members, we have exceeded the time limit allotted for member statement. But at this time, I would like for all members to rise in a moment of silence. Those in the gallery are also free to rise. Thank you. May their souls rest in peace.
Amen.
Appointments of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exumas and Ragged Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to advise notice of the following questions. Will the Prime Minister lay on the table the recently executed heads of agreement for the Harbour Island project and confirm whether due diligence was done on the principles and directives of the development? Will the Prime Minister advise whether any official of this F&M administration visited the proposed site for the Oban Energies project as a part of its due diligence before executing the heads of agreement? Will the Prime Minister advise whether he has suspended the heads of agreement whilst he undertakes the additional reviews? Will the Prime Minister provide full disclosure of the beneficial owners of Oban Energies, including the mentioned K Family Trust, and whether they have any experience in the businesses contemplated in the heads of agreement, and whether due diligence was done on the principles? Will the Prime Minister lay on the table evidence of funding for the Oban Energies deal as promised on February 19, 2018? Will the Prime Minister advise in relation to Oban Energies which of the conditions set out in the 2009 and 2016 approval in principles were met or not prior to the signing of the Oban heads of agreement? I have many more, but I rest for now, Mr. Speaker.
Very good start. You got to sign it.
Order that the document be brought up. order that the document will lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do rise that to renew all matters in the name of the government and to move that the House will adjourn until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 11th of April, 2018. Yeah, you guys can renew it now, and then we'll come. Thank you very much.
Renewal of notices? Yes.
On behalf of the official opposition.
The motion, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town. Adjournment.
I do now move, Mr. Speaker, that the House do now adjourn until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 11th of April, 2018.
It's been moved and seconded that the House adjourn to 10 a.m. the 11th of April 2018. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. Final adjournment.
I do now move, Mr. Speaker, again that the House do now adjourn.
It has been moved and seconded that the House do now adjourn. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. the 11th of April, 2018.
All right.